Hey guys, welcome back to the Talking North podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Today, I'm gonna review our 8-point loss to the Swans on Saturday at Marvel Stadium. Yeah, tough loss that, but to be honest, pretty happy with the performance. Odd to say, a loss is a loss, and we shouldn't be satisfied with that. But I think, given the circumstances, given the fact that the Swans are top of the ladder, I think we really showed our own, and we gave a four-quarter performance, and that's all we can ask for. Obviously, it would have been lovely to get the win, and could argue that we probably should have won, but if you told me that we'd only lose by 8 points to the Swans, I would have taken it. To start off with the first quarter, really fast start to the game. Actually, going into it, I thought, there was a chance that it would be a high-scoring game, a bit of a shootout. The week before, Melbourne and Swans played a pretty high-scoring game, 100 plus. But yeah, first quarter we came out of the blocks, really winning it out the middle. LDU 14 touches was excellent. We're up by 19 points at one point when Finn O'Sullivan got that really nice goal out of the stoppage. Up by 19, about 2 minutes to go on the first, and we kind of just let Sydney get two really late goals, which was frustrating in that first term. So we only went into the quarter time break up by 7. Felt like we should have been up by more. They were quite accurate. So were we in the first term. Just a few frustrating decisions as well. Wardlaw got Heaney, should have been holding the ball, and a deliberate against Constanti, which I thought was ridiculous. But yeah, first term was pretty good, up by 7. Sheezel was being tagged by James Jordan in the first quarter. But as the second quarter started, it seemed as though that James Jordan switched his tag to LDU, which made sense because of how well LDU started in the first term. Bit of a slower start to the term. They got a few goals from free kicks, which were frustrating. So they took the lead. But I thought we worked really well, worked really hard to get back into the game. And we were quite inaccurate, though. I think we should have gone into halftime ahead by more than what we were, which was 1 point. It was 2 goals 6 to 4 goals straight in the second term. And we conceded another goal right at the end, which was frustrating. But we were showing really good signs in the second term, and we were the better team. It was pretty obvious in that first half that we were playing better than the Swans, which was great. Outplaying such a strong side. So fairly happy going into halftime, and then the third quarter came, and it's our weakest quarter of the game for sure. After an early Paul Curtis goal, Swans really started to flex their muscles. Another Tom Papley goal from a stoppage. A minute later, Zerha handballs the ball straight to Chad Warner. We only lose the quarter by 14 points, 4 goals 1 to 6 goals 3. It seemed as though it was their dominant period of the game, but we did stick with them, which I was quite happy about. They did get it out to 19 points at one point, but we were able to bring it back to only 13 points at three-quarter time. So we gave ourselves a chance in the last quarter, and last quarter we kind of, I noticed we tried to make it a bit of a slog. Swans run through the middle is such a big facet of their game, and it looked like we were slowing the ball down a little bit, trying to dictate the game a little bit to stop them flowing so freely through the middle. And I kind of understood it a little bit, but it caused some issues with some turnovers out the back. Colby kicking straight to one of their players. I think it was a little bit too slow, but I do understand the tactical change in the last term to slow it down. Although we did need goals at the end of the game to win it, we did slow the game down to try stop the Swans. And we stuck with them really, if not for missed opportunities, we really could have won this game. Dersma had a chance to, cut the lead to under a goal, and then McLean goes down the other end and scores a goal. We get a late one with Finn O'Sullivan with a really nice leap in the goal square, and then Zerha had a big chance really with 40 seconds to go to get it down to 2 or 3 points, I believe. And then when he missed that, it was kind of that's the game. But, we only fall by 8 points to the Swans. A lot of really good teams have been smashed by the Swans this year, really. The Doggies a few weeks ago lost by about 70. So, I think we can take something out of it. Apart from Swans loss against Hawthorn, I think they would even admit we probably have tested them the most out of any team this year, which is really good. And I think our football at Marvel Stadium this year has been quite good. Before Saturday, we'd won all 4 of our games at Marvel, and nearly pipped Sydney here. So yeah, I think overall we should be pleased with the performance, and I think the fact that we're thinking, myself included, that we probably should have won the game is definitely a sign that we are really improving, right? Like, if we think we should have beat the top of the league, if that's what we're taking out of that game, not we got lucky to be close, that says a lot about our development as a team, and that we actually can match it with the best teams, it seems. I mean, the Geelong game the week prior, we couldn't keep up in the fourth term, but this Sydney game was different. We were able to keep up in the last term. So I was pleased with that, and third loss in a row. We fall to 4 and 5, but I don't see it that way, and I think win-loss isn't crucial yet. It's not the main barometer of where we're at. I believe. I think it's how we can challenge these big teams, and I think this was a big sign that we actually can. And we didn't get the win, but pleased with how we approached the game and how we stuck with them for 4 quarters. Now to the positions. The back line, I think Sydney did score 100 plus, but I think that was heavily due to their accuracy, right? So it was tough for the back line to prevent their accurate kicking, right? You can't do anything when their forwards are kicking, straight through the middle every single time. But I think we did okay, actually, in terms of the backline system and how we managed some of their players. I think no Kerno made it a little bit easier. McLean and McDonald 3 each. Bit of a shame. I think Logan, Comben let those 2 out a little bit too much sometimes on leads. But apart from that, they were pretty stoic in their contest. I think McDonald did well on Roses to keep him to 0, who the week prior against Melbourne kicked 7. Papley got let out on the leash a little bit from 2 stoppage clearances, but I think apart from that, he was kept quiet enough. I think he's had more damaging games against us before. The issue is probably when Heaney and Chad Warner were rotating forward. They're just hard players to match up on. But, I think our backline did reasonably well. I think if Sydney weren't so accurate, we would have kept them to under 100, which would have been a good effort. But yeah, backline, not too disappointed with that. I think getting rid of Core from the team and being a bit smaller back there actually helped. Now to the midfield, it was an interesting midfield battle. Obviously, they've got an elite midfield. Grundy, Warner, Heaney, even Rowbottom and Sheldrick and Jordan are good players. And the clearance battle was pretty close. There was James Jordan definitely had a tagging role throughout the game. First term on Sheasel, and then for the rest of the game, LDU, even though LDU did end up with 34, he got 14 of those in the first quarter. So Jordan prevented LDU from having as big of a game as we might have expected after his first term. It wasn't our best midfield performance because I think they did win clearance, and I think Grundy probably won the Sherry matchup. But what I took away from the midfield battle was probably Will Dawson's role. So he was brought in as a second ruck. Most people probably just expected him to be in the back line, but it had come out before through some sources that he was going to be in the ruck with Sherry. He only played 37% time on field, but I think the stoppages and the clearances where he was the ruck, we did fairly well, and I think he got 2 holding the ball tackles. He took a few nice grabs around the ground. I think I was actually more impressed with Will Dawson's role as a second ruck than Coleman Jones, that's for sure. And I think he's done enough to earn his spot next week. And I'm happy that we tried something out, and I think it worked. Affected Grundy's game at times. Obviously, Grundy was still excellent, but I think pleased with Will Dawson's effort in the ruck. Now to the forward line, this was probably the issue of the game, actually, for us. I mean, accuracy wasn't great, Larky missed 2 easy ones. Darling missed some pretty easy ones as well. Larky and Trembath kept to 0 goals combined, which was a bit of a concern. I think Trembath's now had 3 weeks in a row without kicking a goal, and I think, it was going to happen eventually. He was going to fade a little bit after, setting the world on fire in his first 10 games. He was going to have, some lulls as we face better backlines. But I think, Larky I can't remember the guy's name, but on the tall blonde defender for Sydney, quite an inexperienced defender, and I just think Larky should be doing better in those matchups. If it's excusable, I'd say if it's against, one of the elite defenders like a Wiedering or a Harris Andrews or a Wilkie. But I think against an inexperienced Sydney defender who he did well, fair play to the guy, but I think Larky's got to at least be kicking one or two. So the fact that he couldn't damage on the scoreboard was a bit disappointing. We had some good performers in the forward line, though. I was happy with Dursman's role again. Opportunistic is kind of the word for him, I'd say, this year. Not getting much of the ball, but yet again comes out with two. Should have had three. Curtis was decent again. I only got the one, but I'm liking his work. Darling, two. Should have had more. 2 goals, 3 for him. And then Spargo was decent. Got a goal himself. Constantine was an interesting one. So he got brought into the team to kind of play not a tagging role, but a pretty direct role on Blakey, trying to prevent him from running through the middle. And I don't think it quite worked. I think Blakey did get off the chain a lot. And he tries his heart out, Constantine. I think that you can't deny that he's a hard worker, he's a good tackler. But it is hard a little bit sometimes with small forwards who are there for pressure. And it's sometimes hard to tell, are they really putting enough pressure? Are they really doing enough to be in this team if they aren't impacting on the scoreboard? In saying that, he did kick a goal, and it was a nice goal to kind of get us back in the game late in the third. Constantine's an interesting one, and that small forward role we've not really nailed on the head quite yet. It's throughout the whole year that Constantine position has been rotated between him, Doveston, Bench, and I think it's a position that we're struggling a little bit with. I think all three of those guys are decent players, but obviously none of them are playing well enough to really solidify their spot in the team. So, yeah, the small forward role is a bit of a watch, I'd say. But, yeah, best on ground, I'd say, would be Luke Davies-Uniacke. I think 34 touches, 14 in the first quarter was really the barometer for how well we started that game. So I was very impressed with LDU, and he's putting together quite a good season, I think. I think he's starting to reach career best form, and I think he's still got more to improve on, but week in, week out, I think he's been very impressive, and he's very explosive out the middle, and it's doing us some favours this year. I think one of the positives from the game was actually our ability to win the ball back. I know Sydney converted quite well with their inside 50s, they got. Obviously they won the game with 16 less inside 50s. But I thought we actually did quite well to generate attacks and from their ball. I think, obviously, as I just mentioned, 16 more inside 50s, more scoring shots. We were generating plenty of chances and plenty of opportunities to punish. And then that's where the probably the biggest negative of the game comes. Our accuracy, right? Pretty much kicked the same amount of goals as points, 14-13 to Sydney's 16-9. And accuracy is not usually an issue for us. We're one of the more accurate goal-kicking teams in the league, but just some simple set shots that they were getting down the other end were kind of killing us a little bit. And I think in the end, our 27 scoring shots to their 25, seemingly, we win that game, right? But we don't. They're more accurate. They punish us on the scoreboard, and that's it. And I think if not for our inaccuracies, we win that game, and what a win it would have been. But, there's no point, being in our sorrows over that. We didn't win. We got to improve. It was a good performance, but, yeah, Sydney were just too good on the day. But it's definitely a game we can take a lot out of. Well, to start off with, for those who don't know you, which I doubt will be many, do you want to introduce yourself, your page, and, a bit of your experience of being a North Melbourne fan?
Yeah, so I'm Marnie. I'm the founder of Kanga TV. Very very honoured to be asked to be here. So Kanga TV started in October 2024 on the back of the trade period. A bit of a weird time to launch a YouTube channel an hour after the 2024 trade period ended. But all eyes were on the footy world at the time, so decided to pull the trigger then. It ended up being a wise decision, and talk all things North on a week-to-week basis during the season. Have had some amazing guests on the channel, some incredible conversations, and then also just following any other news that surrounds the club on a week-to-week basis. I've been doing something of this nature for over 10 years now. When I was 16, I wanted to be an AFL journalist, and so I started my first blog. And ever since then, I've done some form of North Melbourne content. I've been a lifelong North supporter. My dad got me into it, and the two of us go to the footy together every single week, along with my brother and the rest of my family. And I've just found it to be a really nice, therapeutic way to share my passion and connect with other North Melbourne supporters. Because growing up, I was one of one at school, anyway. And yeah, it's just been an amazing experience riding the highs and lows with the North Melbourne faithful. And it's definitely pulled me closer to the football club, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, speaking of those, some of those guests, you've had some of the players, so you had Sonia on an episode who obviously is probably hard to choose, but who's like been the most enjoyable and your favorite guest to have on Kanga TV?
Oh, I'm very lucky. I've had a lot of amazing guests on. I think Hugh Greenwood's probably my favorite. I think that's, yeah, just from a personal perspective. He was the first guest I had on the channel. I've been so fortunate to build such an amazing relationship with him. So for him to want to jump on, he actually was the one who asked me, he's like, cool, so you started the channel, when am I coming on? Which was so kind of him. So just from a personal perspective, that was probably my favorite conversation. Eugene Arocco was another one. His story was just incredible. And I was really young when he was at North Melbourne in charge, and he was such a dominant force and a real key to keeping us in Melbourne, sort of 2007, 2008 timeframe. So to hear his story directly from him was amazing. And then David King to come on the channel a couple of times now. He and I have formed a great friendship as well, and we always speak after the game. So I know you asked for one, but there's probably my three favorites.
No, good picks. I love Kingy's work on like First Crack and Fireball. It's the best in a time I feel like where footy journalism's a bit here and there. I think Kingy's like no bias, but I think he's the best out there at the moment for sure.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have him. He's fantastic.
Yeah. So we currently sit at 4 wins and 5 losses this season, and we are on a 3 game losing streak. But despite this, are you feeling optimistic for the next few games for the season?
Yeah, look, I think it's a nice spot to be in. I was reflecting on my own review of the Sydney game, and I was probably a little bit harsh because I was disappointed. I don't know if disappointed is the right way to frame it, but I think I'm at a point now with North where I'm expecting us to actually start winning the games that we're in. And we've been in every game, bar probably one this season. And even in that Geelong game, there was only a couple of goals in it with 5 minutes to go in the third. So it's nice that we're really competitive. It's nice that we're putting ourselves into the frame to challenge some of the best sides in the competition and actually win these games. And it's nice that that Geelong final quarter is an outlier of our season rather than being the rule, which it probably has been for the past few seasons. So two, in my opinion, winnable games coming up, the way that we're playing with Adelaide and then the Gold Coast Suns. And then we have the bye. So I think for us, we have to win at least one, if not both of the next two games, to not just put our own season back on track, but maybe for a little bit of reward for the effort, and for the improvement that we have shown to this point of the season.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think like these are the type of games that I think Adelaide actually are. I know they finished first last year, but I do think that they're a team that we can match in that middle part of the ladder. And I think must win's a bit full on, but I think it kind of is a little bit in a way to show that we are really improving. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree
So
with that for sure.
yeah. It is a bit far fetched, long way to go. But where do you realistically think we can finish this season?
Oh, I think we should definitely be speaking about the wild card spot. The way we're playing is definitely good enough to get us there. The issue for me still lies with our inability to actually win games. We just don't have that ability to rise to another level again when the situation demands of us. I know we did it against Carlton in that last quarter, and I know we did it against Essendon the week before, where we just reined it in when we needed it to. But then against the Giants and again against the Swans over the weekend, when we really needed to put the icing on the cake, very few players were able to stand up and sort of finish. So I think that with all of that said and done, we're showing that we can play good footy, competitive footy that is capable of winning games. We just need to do it for longer, and we need to do it when the situation demands of us. So I don't think that a wild card spot is too far-fetched for us. We do travel a lot in the second half of the year. It's sort of back and forth out of Melbourne. We obviously have that sit in WA. We'll be going to Sydney later in the year again. We go down to Tassie, to Launceston to play the Hawks. So yeah, look, there are winnable games in there in the second half of the year, but we probably need to notch up a couple of others like the one on the weekend if we are realistically a spot for wildcard.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. So yeah, now onto the Adelaide preview. Last time we played them was round 24 last year at Marvel Stadium. We lost by 12 points and we nearly spoilt Adelaide's minor premiership. If we beat them that day, they would have finished second. And I remember we put up quite a good performance that day. Do you remember much about that round 24 game last year?
Yeah, it was a pretty good game. I think it was the third quarter that probably was the deciding factor in the end. I think Adelaide were able to generate a few additional goals. I feel like it was goal for goal at one point, but the Crows did get on top of us. But otherwise, it was relatively even, and we put up a really good fight, which has kind of been a bit of a pattern heading into 2026 as well. It's kind of been a small window of opportunity where the opposition has just blitzed on a few goals. And then when we're able to regain control, we can't quite get ourselves back into a winning position. The biggest thing out of that game, and there's probably three big things out of that game heading into this game. Firstly, Adelaide were a much better, more well-rounded side then than they are now. I don't think their form in 2026 is stacked up to what they showed in 2025. The second thing is that they were without Isaac Rankin in that game. I think that Isaac is definitely a huge piece of the puzzle for them. And I do think that he's a player that really is the difference between winning and losing for the Crows. So maybe that's a Finn O'Sullivan role this weekend. I would expect Foss to go to him and try and shut him down and shut him out of the game, because outside of him, I think our midfield is stronger on paper than what the Crows show. And then the third is the forward line, both forward lines. I don't think our forward line is functioning as well at the moment, particularly those key forwards, as they might have been last year. I know we're without Nick Larkey in that game, but Cooper Trembath was on fire. There's a couple other guys in there who probably aren't just hitting the form we need them to. But then Adelaide's forward line isn't as potent either. Riley Thilthorpe is really badly out of form. Tex has been sidelined injured. So I definitely think it's a very different looking game now to what it was in round 24 last year. And hopefully it works more in our favour than Adelaide's.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know you just mentioned a few of their players like Rankin and Thilthorpe. Is there any other players that you think we need to like keep an eye on that could like open up the game and possibly win it for the Crows?
I think Rochelle does have that ability to hit that like real rare air. And a couple of times this year he's just been on absolute fire. So he'd probably be the other one that I would be looking to pay a little bit of attention to. I know he floats through the midfield and then pushes forward. So whether someone like Jai goes with him, or whether we look to just try and nullify his impact by being more dominant in the midfield and then just relying on our defenders to get the job done. But I would say that Rankin and Rochelle are probably the two that I'd be looking at this stage that would be the most dangerous for the Crows.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you think like their threat last year, and I think the way they beat us in the two games we played them last year, were their three big keys? So it was like Phil Thorpe, Fogarty, Tex. But I think this year, so Tex is injured. Fogarty's in and out. We might be up against our boy Finbar Maley if he comes back in. What do you think the matchups in our back line and their forward line are going to look like? How do you think we match up on their bigs?
I guess it depends on how many of those key defenders play. I still, and it might be an unpopular opinion, would send Griffin Logue to Thilthorpe. I still think he needs to take the best opposition forward. I think Charlie Comben, while his one-on-one defensive work has drastically improved and has been really strong this year, I still like the idea of Charlie having a little bit of freedom to drift off his man and go in for the intercept if required. So I'd probably say that for me, Griffin Logue still gets the number one lockdown job, and then I would give Chom the second. But I guess it really just depends on who is playing for the Crows. And then I would also still stick to, if we can, that two tall key defensive model that we had last week against the Swans and try and inject a little bit more pace into our backline if possible this week.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, like how we line up in the back line, we've got a few interesting possible changes we could make. So Tom Powell, after his groin injury, he's facing a fitness test. He might be back. Trembath has a possible ankle injury, and Dawson only played 37% time. What do you think the team changes will be for this Adelaide game?
I wouldn't rush to bring Tom Powell back. He hasn't had a great year, and I know that he's been pushed out of that midfield and is forced to sort of fill a hole maybe in that high half forward spot. But I just don't think, while his stats have been good, I just don't think he's been that impactful. I wouldn't be opposed to resting Cooper Trembath for a week. I don't know how serious that ankle injury is. But he's been pretty quiet over the past 3 weeks, and Will Dawson only played 30% game time on the weekend because he was exclusively playing as that second ruck. So I don't have an issue with Cooper being rested for a week and then possibly play Will Dawson in both as the second ruck and then also push forward. Sherry also spent a very, very minimal amount of time up forward as well. So I don't mind that idea. Just maybe give him a break, maybe a bit of a circuit breaker. Nick Larkey and Paul Curtis have also been a little bit low on form. So potentially opening up that forward line a little bit more will give them a little bit more room to move. Potentially looking at Riley Hardiman coming back. That's probably the one that a lot of fans have been crying out for. And I thought with the omission of Core last weekend, he would have maybe come back into the side. I just think we need some more run off that halfback, but also someone who is able to defend. I think if we're not playing Core, we probably need to play McDonald. His form over the past fortnight's been a bit iffy, but I think overall he's had a pretty good year. I just think we need a bit more run. And I think Riley can give it to us in a different way that Tom Blamires can, because Tom Blamires is better pushing up on a wing and even floating forward. He's a pretty good kick at goal. We've seen a couple of times this year. So that's probably the way that I would go, but I wouldn't be making changes unnecessarily either. I think cohesion and consistency in the core group of 23, give or take a few key players each week, has been a reason as to why we've been able to play so well as a unit this season as well.
Yeah, fair. Do you reckon we should consider a Whitlock for Trembath, or is that too early to expose him back into AFL footy?
Don't mind the idea. I know he's showed some really good form in the twos. I just think that I don't mind it. I don't know if it's what I would do personally, but if that was the move they made, I also wouldn't mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was looking at it the other day. We're actually 0 and 13 at Adelaide Oval. So we're one of us and the Suns are the only teams that have never won at Adelaide Oval. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's anything to do with the ground dimensions, or do you think it's just by chance every year we've played an Adelaide side, they've been a good side and we've been a bit rubbish?
Yeah, I don't know. Like we took it up to Port Adelaide last year when we played them there. It's probably just a combination of a lot of things. Maybe it's a mental thing as well now. We've gone so long without winning there that maybe the pressure mounts to actually win the game there. But maybe again it's by chance. We also haven't been very good for a while now, and I know that we did play there at periods of time where we were better than we are now. But we've obviously just never been able to play there at the right time. So hopefully, this is the lucky number 14 and we're able to get our first win over at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, I hope so. We have two cracks at it this year because we're playing Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval later in the year as well. So I
So
have a
yeah,
feeling this is the year we finally win at Adelaide Oval because it looks like such a nice ground as well. Like, why can't we
it
play our
is.
best footy there?
It's beautiful. It would be
Yeah.
so nice to get a win over there, especially for like Adelaide-based fans who,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, it's been a bit depressing for them of late.
Y- Yeah, I'd imagine so. So what areas of the game do you think we can exploit the Crows? Because they've obviously been a little bit off form this year. There's been talks about their slow transition and their clearance numbers aren't amazing. What areas in particular do you think we can exploit the Crows and maybe get a win?
I definitely think the midfield is where the game can be won for us. As I mentioned before, I think stopping Rankin and then probably Dawson as well to a lesser extent. They're the two that I think if we can minimize both of their impact, particularly in the middle of the ground, then I think we should be able to get on top where the game like is there to be won. I think LDU's year has been absolutely unbelievable, and there's still room for him to grow. I think Harry Sheasel's had a very good year. I think his year has been a little bit underrated as well, but I think moving him like exclusively into the midfield has been the best thing for him. His two-way running has also been great. Like he was our highest tackler on the ground on Saturday against the Swans. So I think that just speaks volumes of his work rate and how he can impact this side and the multi facets and dimensions that he offers. And then George Wardlaw as well. Probably the best game I've seen George Wardlaw play for a very, very long time against the Swans as well. So all of these guys at full strength and in the middle of the ground with Sherry obviously so dominant, maybe not in the air with the new ruck rules, but his clearance work and the work below his knees in the center of the ground is second to none as well. So I think all of those factors, and then Finn O'Sullivan and Jai Simpkins stepping in to try and minimize the impact of Rankin and Dawson. I think that's probably where we would be able to get on top. That's probably it for me. I think overall our defense probably just needs to tighten up along the ground. I think that was a real reason as to why the Swans were able to expose us on the weekend. Their transition, you mentioned the slow transition from the Crows. I think the quick transition for the Swans was just too much for us to handle, to be honest. So that would just be the one thing I would still want to flag. I think our pressure game really needs to be up and about. And there's definitely now players at every line who are able to apply that immense pressure. We brought Jacob Constanti back into the side. I suspect that he holds his spot. And for that exact reason, for that pressure game to try and offer repeat entries. So there'd be the couple things that I would, flag as things we need to work on, but also an opportunity for us to win the game.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. You mentioned Jacob Constanti, right? He was brought in for Dobberstein to play on Nick Blakey. And although Nick Blakey got like a bit of the ball, some of them were throws as we've seen over the last few days. I actually think Constanti did all right. Do you think his role against Adelaide will be up against Wayne Miller, who's had probably a career best season? Do you think that's who Constanti goes on for the game?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I probably look, I don't know. I think that Constanti had 21 pressure acts against the Swans, but just two tackles. So I think if he's going to commit to playing this like negating forward role on a Miller or on a Blakey, then he's probably got to commit to it a little bit more. I did like that he was able to hit the scoreboard. It's not something we've seen too much from Constanti last season, particularly in the second half of the year. I don't mind the idea of it, as long as it is effective. I probably see the Blakey game a little bit differently. I thought Nick Blakey was great, and I thought that it was a really important piece to the Swans' quick transition out of defence, which I thought won them the game and was probably the difference on the day, alongside Isaac Heaney. So, yeah, for me, I don't mind it, and I do think that he'll play again on the weekend. But again, the coaches may have seen the game a little bit differently to me.
Do you think we need Will Dawson as a second ruck against an Adelaide side that don't have a ruck anywhere near as strong as Grundy?
I liked the game that Dawson played on the weekend. I thought that when he was on the ground, he applied pressure. I really liked that rundown tackle, was obviously awesome. I think it really depends on Cooper Trembath. If Cooper Trembath doesn't play, I wouldn't mind seeing Will Dawson in there for another week. I think it's a really good option for us to have and just expose him at AFL level as well. At the end of the day, this is one of the guys that Brady Rawlings sort of spoke about at the end of last year as a real piece to the future, and the way that he slotted in so seamlessly against the Swans, who are a really forceful opponent. I thought he was great for the time that he did spend on ground. So I would wait and see what selection says this afternoon, and if Cooper Trembath doesn't play, then I would like to see Will Dawson. Either way, I'd like to see him in there. I think he's capable of playing more than, 40% game time or whatever it was. But again, you make a good point. It depends on what the role is that he's going to play and if we think that it's necessary to have him there.
Yeah, fair. Because last week I was quite surprised. I thought we brought him in as a defender, right? He's been playing pretty much all season in the VFL as a defender. He's done a bit of like second ruck stuff with Goad in the twos, but I thought we brought him in very specific for the back line. But I don't think he's in the back line at all. With Adelaide's tall forward line, does he slot in the back line? What do you reckon?
Yeah, possibly. And the thing with Will Dawson is it would be so dangerous if he was able to be a defender and then come in as a second ruck option. We know Cooper Trembath can do that, and his vertical leap is amazing, and he's been great chopping out for Sherry when he's needed to. So imagine having Trembath to be able to do that at one end of the ground and then Dawson to do that at the other end of the ground. I think it would be a really, really valuable weapon for us. If they do see him as part of this back line in the future, then I don't see why we shouldn't start exposing him at senior level bit by bit, especially because I'm sure we'd want to do that with Taylor Goad at some point later on in the year as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned earlier we've got some, work in our defensive structure and, sticking to our player. With some of the Wiedering rumours and Voss getting the sack yesterday, does this open up a potential move for Wiedering? Like maybe at the end of this year? What are your thoughts on the Wiedering situation?
100% that's someone we should be looking to go after at the end of the year. And it wouldn't surprise me if, where there's, smoke, there's usually fire, right? Like these rumors don't just start from nowhere. I guess the question is this a rumor that started because an expert thought that it would be a good idea, or has it actually come from, reliable sources it's been reported on? I think that's sort of still a little bit unclear, but the rumors are starting to generate a little bit of momentum. And I think we have to be realistic about where we're at. And if we really think that we're a chance to challenge for not just a wild card spot, but finals and really make a charge like quite hard in the next few years on field, then the defenders that we've got at the moment just aren't going to cut it. And we desperately need to add somebody into the fold. I think Wiedering is perfect. He's not even 30 yet. So I think he would be an unreal addition to that back line. It's whether he wants to come across the North. I think in terms of picks, like we've had so many first round picks. We've got so much great talent. But it's now we need to address the needs and the gaping holes on our list, and we need to start filling those with well-established players. We've seen what Parker and Darling have been able to do for this side, and even Daniel so far this year. I think like Wiedering doesn't even fit in that category. Like he's in a category of his own. He'd be able to play for 5, 6, 7 years in that back line. So it's absolutely a conversation that I'd be having. And I wouldn't be paying stupid amounts to bring him over, but I think I'd be throwing a really attractive package at Carlton to hopefully try and convince them and him that this is the right move.
Yeah, for sure. I think every North fan would agree that a key defender is the missing piece, and I think it would open up the games of Comben to be able to be more of an interceptor, and hopefully down the line, Will Dawson to be a second defender. I see Weeder and Will Dawson and Comben as that would be my ideal 2027 round one back three. But, I'm being optimistic here, but I think that would really set us up to be a top six team next year.
Yeah, wow, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Final one. What is your prediction for this game? How much? Who wins and by how much? What do you think, Marnie?
I really think North can win this one, and I'm going to back them in. I err on the side of optimism more often than not. I think we could beat them by 2 or 3 goals. I don't think it would be a blowout. It'd be a pleasant surprise if it was a blowout in our favour. I just think we have to be really careful going into this match. Adelaide got the win over Richmond on the weekend, but they weren't really that impressive. But we've lost 3 games in a row now. And as awesome as our form has been, as exciting as we've been to watch, I don't want us to get carried away. I want us to really look at this game and think, right, if we put 110% into it, then we can walk away with the victory. So I definitely go in feeling good and feeling confident, but also understanding what is needed to get the job done. And hopefully all those things can come together. I think this will be a really big scalp for us. You mentioned the record at Adelaide Oval. We also hadn't defeated Adelaide for quite some time. I know we came close, but I don't think we've beaten them since 2020. So this would be a really, really good game for us to win. And I think it would give us a really, really good confidence boost of returning to Marvel Stadium next weekend as well. And maybe it will help us view us the rest of our season a little differently if we can get the job done.
Yeah, I think in seasons past, off a 3 game losing streak, we definitely don't win this game. But I think in the losses we've shown stuff and we've shown we can win games this year. So I actually think we will win this one. I mean, obviously being optimistic, but I don't usually tip North, but I'm actually going to tip us this week. I think we beat Adelaide. I don't think they're a strong team this year. I actually, in my ladder prediction, I had them outside of the top 10.
Oh, wow.
I think last year they finished first. They played well, but I think their fixturing suited them, and I think the game has gone past their slow style. So I think we can beat them with pure pace and pure midfield dominance. I reckon we win by, I'm going to say like 15 points. That would be my pick.
Fingers crossed. Here's hoping
Yeah,
we're celebrating that at the end of Saturday.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me, Marnie. I appreciate it. The second guest on Talking North podcast. Yeah, best of luck to the boys on the weekend. Hopefully we can pull it off.
Thank you so much for having me, Liam. And yes, hopefully it's a good omen and we roll in to a big, big game and a big, big victory on Saturday.